All right, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Secrets from the Saddle, all things cycling podcast with your host, Sylvie Daou, and good friend of mine, Nick Van Hoeften.
Obviously not that good, Nick Van Haeften, but that's okay.
Haeften, I was getting close. And so Nick and I go back a long way. I asked him to be a guest on the podcast because we have multiple things in common with regards to cycling. Not only do I know him because I used to race against his wife, Judith Hayes, long time ago, like 10 years ago. We were competitors on the sidelines, so that's how I got to know Nick. But now also both of them participate in our club's Cycle Fit Chicks, my club's time trial here in our region. And also he is an event organizer and he's been just in the scene for, I won't say decades, because we both have been in for decades. So before I bring Nick out, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background of him. He's been an avid cyclist since 2009. Really? Not been longer than that? Oh yes, show off your shirt. That's right.
Yeah.
And he got into the sport after his wife Judith, 3-time national champion and 5-time provincial TT champion, took up the sport. Actually, I got into cycling 2005, racing, so she must came on the scene. So Nick had a very successful amateur sailing career, racing fireballs. Oh, that's cool. I have to talk about that. And Tanzer 22s, 420s, J24. So I'm assuming if anybody's a sailor who's listening, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't. And sharks. So I don't see any lasers in there. I know what a laser is. Nick is part of Montreal team that has consistently on the podium and won provincial. So this is sailing. He moved into time trials, where he now organizes his sort of like, well, it's a Saturday time trial series in Montreal. And it's more of a training series race, but we're going to talk about that. So I just want to bring, Nick out. He's going to tell you more about his story, but Nick, I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, thank you, Sylvie. It's great to be here. And first of all, before we do anything else, huge palmares to you and the Cycle Fit Chicks crew for the Wakefield Chelsea time trials. It was so great to have it back on the calendar this year. Awesome that it's part of the FQSC series, which means, of course, if I look at it in my category, Stéphane Demers travels from Thetford Mines, Quebec, which, to come and do your time trial and kick all our asses. But I mean, so yeah, it's the reputation is growing every year. Your gang does an awesome job. We know it's all volunteers. So we've really enjoyed that. I don't necessarily enjoy the hills. I mean, fortunately, I guess your audience can only see me from here up. It only gets bigger. I'm like the world's biggest jockey, and in this case, cyclist. And so Sylvie's time trials, of course, are on the bumps of Wakefield Chelsea, let's call it. But it finishes with what, about a 12 degree climb, I guess, on that last little punch.
Is that it? Is it 12 degrees?
I thought it was like
it's
35.
A tough one.
Yeah,
like if you're not geared up properly, it can be a real kick in the teeth.
And I mean, well, that's it. And I have a 56 chainring in the front, so I also have to be super careful with the gearing. Otherwise, I just come to a stop. But yeah, so again, congratulations to you and the gang. I mean, it was once again a great day. Temperature was a smidge cooler than last year because our 2019.
God, you
I guess.
Remember that? I just
remember it. I nearly passed out.
Oh.
And I do have to apologize. I was so tapped. First of all, I did not think I'd be on the podium, but I was so exhausted after this year's. I got into I changed and sort of staggered over to take pictures of the winners. And then, of course, you call out my name. I'm like, oh, okay. So, yeah, apologies for not wearing team kit.
On.
Oh, I'd been swimming. It was a hot event. But
yeah, it was. Yeah, that one
as always, it was great.
But...
Only disappointment. No room at Les Forges for lunch. I mean, that was.
Oh.
However, I could
Next
probably
time
miss a lunch
just kept
or two.
the reserve.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it, right? Well, hopefully by next time, the whole full dining room, everything else will be open. But it's
Yes,
always,
well, next
sorry.
year is hopefully going to be different. I'm hoping to add, and funny, like before we get, like I always ask Nick, like people how you got into cycling, but just to add on to what you're talking about is I put out, remember we were talking about collaboration. So I did put it out in the final email and I had somebody reach out. So we're going to
Excellent.
see where that goes because, and I took the liberty of reaching out to the municipalities that I work with and asking them if it would be possible to extend and do other like multiple events on that one weekend. So it might just turn into a stage race that, you know, the FQSC is just going to have to look at and not put another event on the damn weekend.
Well, I would say get it in early, but they seem to do whatever the hell they want anyway. So
Yes.
all you can do is, I mean, like I said, you've built a reputation. I think if you build it, they will come is probably the best thing I could say, and we will definitely. So I mean, yeah, no, always
All
enjoy it.
right. Excellent. Okay, so let's just get into Nick, how did you get into cycling way back when? I know with you
Well,
said that, you know, Judith had a role in that. So let's hear it from you.
most definitely. Well, probably one of the most traumatic experiences of my life was buying my first road bike, but that would have been 1972. You're trying to convince your father why you need a, a road bike as opposed to getting, a sit up and beg Mary Poppins bike, which he thought would be just fine, a 3-speed, get you to back here and there. And there was no logical answer for a 12-year-old to say why you need a racing bike at that age, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
everyone else has one, just wasn't cutting it. So that was my introduction to cycling, having borrowed my sister's bikes for many, many years before that when I was a little kid. Anyways, fast forward, I started racing sailboats when I was 7 and raced competitively, and that kind of took up everything. I also played pretty much every sport where if you could knock down your opponent, that usually gave me a good advantage. So I played football, I played rugby, I played soccer, I played all of, which were all fairly time consuming as well. Cycling was a way to get from point A to point B. Judith, my wife, decided in 2008 that she should do something. She'd never done competitive sports. She'd never done anything competitive in any way. And so she joined the Beaconsfield Cycling Club, looked around, a smidgen different, took all the maps, because in those days you still had printed maps, and started cycling and found a couple of friends who she started cycling with. And that was her first year. I ended up going to the closing dinner for the club, met some people there, sort of saw they all didn't have 2 heads and 5 eyes and thought, okay, these are nice people. And really wanted to do something. I've always raced. I've had the same racing team in sailing. My partner and I had been together for actually as long as Judith and I had been together. So we'd raced as a team for like 27 years back then. And so I said, all right, I'll pick up this cycling thing. And Judith's first road bike we bought from a shop. And I got to know the owner quite well because he was close to where I was working. So I would bring Judith's bike in and he said to me, oh, you don't ride, you don't do this. And so as the great story goes, he was going to, I guess, Vegas for Interbike. And he said, hey, do you want to borrow my bike? And we were the same size, same leg length, same everything else. So I'd been riding what I realized was probably like a 45-pound mountain bike. And then suddenly got on this carbon bike and it was like getting onto a rocket ship. So that was fun. Gave him back his bike, went back to my bike. Judith was still doing her thing. And then he said, I'm actually going to Germany for the big Interbike show. Do you want to borrow the bike again? And I'm a salesman by career profession. So I said to him, I don't understand why you're riding an old bike when if I owned a bike shop, I'd be riding the newest piece of equipment every year to try and promote it. And he looks at me and goes, oh. So anyways, came back and he goes, so.
He didn't give you a little like, but the steel is better.
Well, I mean, no, I was saying he should be riding a new bike. I was more than happy to ride his old bike. And so when he came back from Interbike, he said to me, so were you thinking about buying this bike? And I go, well, if the price is right for this old bike we've both established. So that was my first Trek Pilot 5.2 with, it had like a suspension thing on the back. but that's what I bought. It was awesome. And I always remember, because people still get baffled. He goes, great, I just have to take off the pedals. I look at him and go,
Sorry, you don't get the saddle either.
I just looked at him and said, well, is it a magic bike? Do I not need pedals? He goes, well, they go with the shoes. And of course, he and I were the same shoe size as well, right? So I looked at him, he goes, you want my shoes as well? So yeah, I bought everything. But, so that was
like,
my
can
first.
I just take your jersey and?
Oh, no, there was, yeah, I would have needed 3 of his jerseys and sewn them together to fit me. So that wasn't going to be in the cards.